Hello, nature enthusiasts. Well, today I am up in the Sierra Mountains. I'm actually in Nevada, on the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe. And up here amongst the remaining snow from the winter and the white-headed woodpeckers and the mountain chickadees, I've been thinking a fair bit about how birds keep warm when it gets cold outside. Because even though spring is coming, even though a lot of the snow is melting, there's still quite a bit of snow, and at night it's still getting pretty cold. So it's definitely been a subject on my mind. And yeah, there are a lot of really remarkable ways that birds stay warm. I was hoping to share some with you, with the full acknowledgement that this is not going to be a complete list. And in fact, if you want to add some comments and share other ways that birds stay warm, ways that I do not cover here, that would be fantastic, because I'm always learning more ways and being reminded of more ways. And if you can help me and share more ways, that's just fantastic. So please do. But some of the ways that birds do keep warm is thanks to all sorts of different adaptations that they have developed. And some of these are physical adaptations, and some of these are behavioral adaptations. So some of the physical ones are feathers. That's probably the biggest adaptation that birds have evolved to keep warm. They have feathers. This may very well be one of the reasons that feathers first evolved originally, millions and millions of years ago, to help thermoregulate, to help control the body temperature of an organism. So birds are warm-blooded, so they generate a lot of their own heat. But to trap that heat against them, they have feathers. In my video on feathers, that I will link at the end of this video, I talked about how much time birds spend preening and how important preening is. And one of the big reasons that birds spend so much time preening their feathers. And preening means to sort of organize and smooth and clean and just maintain those feathers. One of the big reasons they do that is so that they can use their feathers to keep them nice and warm. Because clean feathers, dry feathers, organized feathers all help to trap pockets of air down next to the skin. And that's what allows a bird to stay warm. That is the insulation that feathers provide. Which leads me to one of the behavioral adaptations that they have. And that is, sometimes you'll see birds fluff their feathers up. It makes them look kind of bigger, sometimes a little bit fatter. They're not actually getting fatter as you watch. They're lifting their feathers up to trap even more air under those feathers against their skin to try to give themselves even a thicker layer of insulation. Another physical adaptation that birds have, is, especially in their legs, they have two things going on. They have scales. Have you ever noticed that birds have scales on their feet? Well, those scales are bad at transferring heat, which is good if the heat is on the inside and it's cold outside. You don't want that heat transferring out. So those scales help trap some of the heat inside. They also have a really interesting physical adaptation called countercurrent circulation. And what that means is the blood vessels carrying blood out, away from the body to the feet, run counter, or right next to, the blood vessels bringing blood back in from the feet back to the core of the body. And what this means is the blood going out, all nice and warm, transfers that heat to the blood coming in to warm it up, so that it isn't lost through the feet. Because while scales are great at keeping some heat loss down, it's still going to lose some heat. Toes are thin, extremities are thin, they lose heat. And so to reduce that, there's this countercurrent flow where the heat is removed from the blood going out and put into the blood going in, and so kept inside the body as a whole. That leads me to another behavioral adaptation that birds have, and that is tucking. You'll often see birds, when they're out someplace cold, maybe tucking one leg up under their feathers, or burrowing their beak under a wing. That's, again, to take these areas of extremities, beaks in their face, toes in their feet, and tucking them up someplace closer to the core of their body. It's exactly what I'm doing right now to keep my hands warm, right? I'm bringing my fingers, which are extremities, in closer to the core of my body and tucking them into the insulation that I have. Now, I don't have feathers, but I do have this jacket, and it's providing me the same idea, same insulation, to keep my extremities warm when it's cold. It's a behavioral thing that I can do, and it's totally a behavioral thing that birds do. You can see birds when they're cold, they tuck their beak under their wing. They often will tuck one leg or the other, and they'll take turns, they'll shift from leg to leg to keep their feet warm. Another physiological adaptation that birds have is fat reserves. Birds eat food and build up layers of fat. And layers of fat are really good at, again, insulating the body, keeping the heat inside of the body and not allowing it to escape out. This is the same idea of why whales have thick layers of fat on there in the form of blubber. That layer of fat around a whale's body keeps it warm even when it's very, very cold waters. So a layer of fat can keep a bird warm even when it's very, very cold outside in the air. And this leads me to another behavioral adaptation that birds have to keep warm, and that is to go find food. Especially, they really start to target high protein, high calorie foods in the wintertime. So they want things with just going to pack the calories on so they can build up those fat reserves. So there's, a nice little sort of pairing of some behavioral adaptations and some physiological adaptations that birds have developed in order to stay warm when it's very cold outside. And there are a bunch of things that you can do to help them. Keeping bird feeders stocked with high nutrition, high calorie foods is great. If you want to put out some peanut butter or some suet, that would be really helpful to a lot of birds when the temperature starts to get cold. If you want to provide them some shelter, bird houses and bird boxes are things that sometimes birds use when it's cold because it gives them a little sort of sheltered area to stay in. One other thing that you can do for birds that helps them out is to provide them with a water source. This doesn't really link in with any of the adaptations that I just talked about, but it's still another great thing that you can do to help birds in the wintertime when it's getting cold. And that is, birds can eat snow and melt it themselves sort of internally, but that uses up a lot of energy. It cools them down. It causes them to burn calories just to warm the water up that they could use for other things. And so if you could provide them with melted water, with even warmed water in like a heated bird bath, they sell these things exist. That warm water just means that they can drink the water that they need, but without using the calories to get the snow or ice warmed up to the point where they can use it. So another useful tidbit. Should you live in a cold space and you want to provide and can provide a water source. So like I said, that is by no means a complete list of the things that birds do to stay warm. And in fact, there's one more crazy one, and it's called torpor, and it's basically a mini hibernation, and it's so crazy. At some point I'm going to do a separate video all by itself just for torpor, because torpor totally deserves it. But add more in the comments, fill out this list, remind me and tell me about more ways that birds stay warm when it's cold, and share stories of times that you've seen birds doing these things. If you've seen birds out, fluffing up crazy ways or doing crazy fun things that they do largely to keep warm, add them in the comments below. I love reading these kinds of stories. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something from it. I hope you share some knowledge with me. And like the video, thank you very much for the view. And until next time, enjoy the natural world.